Hello, my name is Elizabeth Nakiru, the host for the Women in Tax show. We will be meeting a very important and special guest, and I can't wait to introduce you to her. She is the new Commissioner, Legal Services and Board Affairs at URA. Thank you for joining us. Let's dive in. Hello, Catherine. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Please introduce yourself and what you do at URA.
Well, thank you for the very warm welcome.
Yes.
Good afternoon to you. I am Catherine Kyokunda Donovan.
Yes.
And I am in the Commissioner Legal Services and Board Affairs at URA. I am a mother, a Christian, a wife, a daughter.
Nice.
So there's so many different aspects of myself. And I suppose really the embodiment of who I am. I'm very passionate about having a mission in life, making each day count.
Nice.
Because it won't be coming back tomorrow.
No.
What's gone is gone. So I really live by that. And I should say I'm a Christian. I confess the Lord Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior.
Nice.
And in Him I live and move and have my being.
Yeah.
So that's who I am.
I love the introduction, the Christian, the mother. We just go back to the beginning. When you were little and a young girl, what was the dream for you growing up?
Okay, you find this really weird. I don't think there are many people who have this dream. But when we were little, we had a really, really lovely house helper.
Nice.
And so the first thing I articulated growing up was, when I grow up, I want to be a maid. Because she was really lovely to us.
Wow.
And it's a very weird concept when I think about it now, but because she was really kind and she took passion in everything she did. So unfortunately that's pretty much what I thought. And then I thought, when I grow up I want to write. And that's because I used to write poems to my mother.
Nice.
So I thought, I want to be a writer. I accidentally dropped into law. It wasn't my first choice particularly.
So what was the first choice when you're studying? At what point did you start figuring career things out?
I have to be honest, I don't think I really had it figured out. So I have a great empathy for youth who are asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think, goodness me, that was a horrible question to ask me. So I don't think I really had it figured out growing up. But when I was going to university, nobody had really taken much focus in terms of what I was choosing. Somehow I was left to my own devices. And then when the results came out, everybody had a keen interest because I'd scored extremely well. Nice. And suddenly they were telling me, there is no way you're going to take this to writing. Because I wanted to do mass communication. But I would have been terrible at it because I'm the last to know the news. So clearly I wasn't meant to do that. So they were telling me I should go and do law. And I remember asking, so what's that? What does a lawyer do? We didn't have any lawyers in the family. True. So I didn't understand, and they really tried hard to explain it to me, but I didn't quite grasp. But when I went to law school, particularly when I was doing my legal practice diploma, I think it just came into my own at LDC. It all clicked together, and I knew I was passionate about it. And I just understood it. They used to tease me, they used to call me citator because I was the geeky child student who would go like, case this case versus case this. They would call me citator.
You go through campus, you do the 4 years, and then it clicks for you at LDC.
It clicked at LDC because LDC was practical. But at university, at campus, I went to Makerere, and I remember thinking, why are we studying constitutional law? And what are all these English cases about? What do they have? What does Donovan versus Stevenson have to do with us in Uganda about some drink? And I just never got the concepts quite until I went to LDC, and because it was a lot more practical, I absolutely enjoyed that. And I knew this is something I absolutely enjoy.
Okay.
So I came into my own then.
Okay.
So by default, somehow I ended
Somehow you
up
got
there.
in.
Yeah.
Okay. So you finished law school, you go to LDC. How did you get into the job market from that point on?
So I had made, if I'm honest, I'd made a commitment to someone. I had a relative who was expecting, and she came to me when I was at Makere, and she said she was pregnant and she didn't know how she was going to look after her child. So I promised her then that I would look after her child. So I was one of those who desperately needed to quickly get a job because I had a child to look after.
True.
And that was really a huge motivation for me. So the first law firm I went to, I think it was somewhere close to William Street.
Yeah.
And then I realized there were not many clients walking into that law firm.
And you had a child
And
to
I
take care
had
of.
a child to look after.
Yeah.
So I went around looking for where else I could get work.
Right.
And I was doing all sorts of things. And then I remembered that one of the lecturers at LDC had mentioned these jobs in some project. So I went to him and said, do you remember that conversation you had whilst you were teaching us? I need the job. I desperately need the job. So my first year of work I was doing everything I could because I had a child that I'd committed to before they were born, and I was determined to keep that promise. So I worked really hard, and I recall having to go to work and then coming back in the evening, and there was this baby.
They brought the baby.
They brought the baby because the mother had complications and she had to go back to the hospital. I had to look after the baby. So sleepless nights, and I had these files. So in a sense, I got straight into it. There was no option for me. I straight away started working, and because I'd made the commitment, and I like to keep my commitments. If I say I'm going to do something, I am
you actually have to get it
pretty
done.
much, I've got to get it done. Otherwise, it would really bother me. But that was a great thing because that child motivated me.
So would you say this is your first experience as a mother?
Genuinely, yes, because especially because the mother went back into hospital, and so I was going to work during the day. And I remember those days, there were not many computers around. I was trying to also learn the computer in those days. And at the same time, in the evening, I had this child the night. So, and I think looking after her at that point, I must have promised myself, I said, kids, not for me. Not for me. Yes, it was too much. But it was also a good thing because I just had to work and make sure I had the right salary. So I guess in no time, I was working probably double time than my colleagues.
True.
And trying to find whichever way to make sure I pay the bills. Even though I was still in my parents' home, I had a child to look after. Yeah.
So how did that affect your work? Was there any huge effect that it had on you as a person or at work? Is there something that stood out for you?
I guess it just made me work hard from the beginning. I think it just set the pace. So I don't really know any difference in terms of working hard and working long hours and knowing that I had to do what I needed to do. I think it was a good setup for me because it wasn't like I could afford the luxury of being in the job market looking for a job. I just knew I had to find the work. I was very much looking at, where's the salary going to come from to pay the bills. And I guess when you've had that, you're always going to work hard because you don't really know any difference.
Push yourself either way.
Yes.
You have to.
You don't know any difference. But also, one of the great things about it is it landed me into dealing with projects. So one of the projects I was dealing with was revising the cases. And it was a law reporting project where we would revise all the cases. And I think that really helped me because one of the key things was editing and proofing and reading. These were volumes and volumes of cases, so to speak. And when you have that approach, I think it's quite a good base. So I was learning what cases, what decisions, what precedents, which is very key for my career. And at the same time, I was working in a law firm. So at the time, I worked in a commercial law firm. And I guess because tax in many ways it's a commercial background, you've got to understand business concepts.
Sure.
So it was a very good grounding. Whereas if I'd just stayed in that small law firm, perhaps I wouldn't have gotten far because they didn't have many commercial cases. And so it was great in that, you know.
So I read somewhere in your profile you worked at Parliament. So at what point in time do you now transition and get into working at the Parliament of Uganda at that time?
So I'd worked in a law firm for quite a while.
Okay.
But I guess when you've just started working, you get to that point where you're thinking, so where do I go next? And then I had started applying for all sorts of jobs because this is what you do. At a certain stage, you work in a law firm and then you think, well, what else? What else is out there? And then I did several applications for several jobs.
Okay.
Now, the horror of it was I got a phone call telling me to come for an interview.
Okay.
But I couldn't remember what job I'd applied for. And I couldn't really ask over the phone call.
You just say yes?
Say, what job was it? All I knew is I was required to go to Parliament. So I turned up at Parliament, and the good thing for me, the other candidate who was being interviewed was next to me. So I'm like, so what job is it? And ask this young lad what job we were applying for and what we're being interviewed for. And so he tells me the job, and I'm thinking very fast. I'm thinking, all right, this is legislative drafting. And of course, I didn't have the background for legislative drafting at all at that stage. And I got into my interview, and they asked me all sorts of questions. And they asked me what parliamentary commission was. Obviously, I hadn't done any research because I didn't know the job I was coming for. As you do, you know, when you're applying for all sorts of jobs in the newspaper, whatever you hear about, you put in your application, you know. So, I wasn't, they wanted 2 candidates. I wasn't among the first 2. I was third.
Okay.
But the second candidate got a job elsewhere. So I was the runner-up. So I only came in the back door as a runner-up for this job. But I took to it. I absolutely loved it. And I actually thrived in that environment. So I was working with the finance committee. So dealing with the bills, the legislation, which was quite handy. And then I was also attached to the legal committee. Nice. So in a sense, it couldn't have been better in terms of what I'm doing presently.
Right now,
But also, whilst there, I was representing the Parliamentary Commission. So I had the opportunity to represent Parliament in an employment case at the High Court, where I was interviewing the Deputy Speaker of Parliament because it was an employment case. So I guess in many ways, it's almost like a come full circle into the present, but I was on the other side with the finance, Ministry of Finance.
Would you say that was your first introduction to tax, like real tax and not just a little bit of tax?
That's true, because in a sense that was like on the ground kind of introduction to tax, particularly the tax bills, which are every year, and having to deal with that and to do the legislative drafting from that angle of legislative drafting. Also, because then I did a diploma in legislative drafting, I had the opportunity to go to India for 3 months to do a course, and I suppose it changes your perspective, because when you're going through law school, you learn about the cases, but then this is now like the legislative side of things. And with the tax bills, they can be quite tricky, but I think one of the beauty was being able to understand the codes and the schedules from a tax perspective when they're going through that, and to understand the reason behind it, because as a legislative drafter, I was involved at stakeholder level, where the subcommittees would meet with stakeholders, and then I would sit on the Committee of Finance. And so when you sat there with the representatives from the Ministry of Finance, and they say, Council, what do you think? And you're like thinking on the spot. So it was a good introduction. But then beyond that, I decided to do a master's in law. and my master's in law was actually international tax and revenue. So, which I felt I was quite interested in the commercial aspect, so to speak, as well as business law. So that was, I guess, good grounding, and I was commercially inclined in a sense. But also, I think it was around the same time when they first set up the Tax Appeals Tribunal. Because I'm not sure about when it was originally set up, but I had the opportunity to do a project where I was harmonizing the regulations governing the Tax Appeals Tribunal with the tax legislation. So in a sense, it was looking at both sides. And, you know, in terms of both lenses. And I was able to also do the research over tax matters. So I kind of had this awareness of Uganda Revenue Authority. I knew the commissioner because of those elements. So in a sense, I was in the tax area.
You were already in the tax area at that time.
It was in a different capacity.
True. You mentioned that you were a mother. How is motherhood, and how do you find it?
I would say motherhood is a real privilege to be a mother. I have to be honest, I'm one of those people who every time I was expecting, I'd be in denial for 3 months. Not in a bad way, but like in my head, I think I'll just be like totally amazed, even though I should not say this probably, but I think the concept of being a mother and being responsible for a child, another human being, even though I guess because I'd seen this young mother with a child. And it made me I was just very aware of the sense of responsibility. But I'm very, very, very fortunate. I've got 3 girls.
Nice.
They're all girls. And we're very close. And the best thing about it is as they grow, the relationship with them is just one of those incredible gifts. Like, I think they're all very different, my girls. Very different in character. One is absolutely straight speaking and bold and absolutely fearless, the eldest. And the other one, although she seems tame, is, you know, you can't undermine what she's capable of doing. And I think I feel it's a real privilege being able to nurture women and show them how to live by example. And I always tell them, you can do anything you put your mind to. And one of my daughters in her speech at school actually quoted, as my mother says, I can do anything I put my mind to. So it's great because they're growing up as strong girls, and I genuinely do enjoy being a mother. It's a gift. It's an absolute gift.
That's impressive. I'm also a mother of one, though it's a boy. I'm hoping for a girl maybe sometime.
Girls are a joy. I don't know about boys, but girls are a joy.
That's interesting. That's really nice to know that you're a mother. And I'd just like to know, how did you manage to balance growing a career and raising a family all at the same time? Because sometimes it's like one has to give. There's the family obligations on one hand, and then there's career on one hand, and you're like this passionate person, you're into your career. How did you manage that? Or how are you still going about it?
I can't say it's easy. I think it's not being sexist or anything, but the guys have it quite easy because your body doesn't change for a start.
True, exactly.
And in a sense, the things I can do for my children, their father cannot necessarily meet those needs. It's a very special thing, being a mother. And the attachment with your children is very different. So I have to say, one of the things I always found was a bit upside down was you want to show your children that you should go to school, you should get a career, and at the same time, you're supposed to be present for them. And I think the key thing I always said, so let's make our choices. This is how I present it. Let's make our choices. Would you like me to go to work, make a living so I can afford to give you A, B, C, D? Or would you rather I stay home, but then would have to literally cut down to this is how we can live and make those choices. It's a very difficult one. I had a point where I had to take a career break for my children because they needed me.
How
And
long
I
was
did
that?
it.
How long was
It
that?
was for 5 years.
Wow.
I decided to take a career break. And because one of them particularly needed me much more. And I wanted to walk the journey with her. And I think the beauty is, I suppose for many mothers, you may have periods where you think, well, actually, they need me.
Yeah,
And I think it's okay to make those decisions. I'm one of those who really believe it's okay to make those decisions. And actually, you can get back because I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say to anyone, yes, family has to come first, I'm afraid. But at the same time, we should not think that motherhood takes away from being a career woman.
Okay, I like that.
Because otherwise, why are you saying the children should go to school and get the highest possible education if ultimately they're not going to use those skills
Okay.
or get them to develop, as to the best of their abilities, just like anybody else?
Okay.
It's a real fine balance, I have to say, that women have to do, but it's possible. I believe it's possible.
Okay. Okay, like you've just related about motherhood, the time that you have to make up your mind, make these hard decisions. Would you say tax is as hard?
Tax is nothing compared to motherhood. I mean, the two are completely different.
So would you say tax is hard, or?
Raising children does not have a script. At least in tax, you can look at the legislation, isn't it? But you have no manual with children, do you?
Yeah, and everyone is different in their own ways.
It's completely different. I don't know. But when I look at tax, I don't feel it's complicated in that way.
Okay.
It's commercial. It's the principles are basic in the sense that we need to develop our nation. The money has got to come from somewhere. It just happens to be tax. It's almost like if you were looking at it from a household perspective, if you're like in a family unit, everybody, if there's lots of chores to do, everybody has got to contribute.
Yeah. To the family.
It's the same concept, but now from a national perspective. And obviously, tax is a creature of statute. So it has to be embedded in the law. You have to say, what is it that you realize in terms of the actual revenue figures? And so I personally don't look at it as complicated. I know the interpretation can be very subjective, but so are other areas of law. I think the reason why we consider tax to be slightly complicated is because it affects everybody.
Yeah, it does. It does. At a certain point.
Nation.
Yeah.
Nobody was, it's like that 10th you have to pay, everybody has to pay. But then it's what makes us a community.
Yeah.
It's what makes a nation. Because for any nation, you have got to think about where is the money that's going to run our government.
True.
And that has got to come from somewhere, and that just happens to be tax. So it's not complicated, but perhaps we complicate it. And sometimes it's the fact that it's not a desirable thing. I think part of the trouble we have, for instance, in Uganda is somebody goes through school, wants to get a job, get the best job, get your money, or wants to start a business. They start a business, and at that point, nobody has mentioned to this person that they're going to pay tax.
True, that is true in Uganda.
So they go through school, they go through secondary school, they go through. The concept is almost very alien. So right now they'll go and then register for their business, get a TIN number, and the day you make profit, your it turns up.
We want money.
Pretty much. And I think that's the challenge we have in that it's not planned for. Somebody hasn't planned for it. When they were planning, they planned for the cost to do the business. They planned for the profit they're going to get. They planned for the rent they will have to pay for the premises. But nobody sat down and planned what is the tax that comes out of it. So they did not calculate that. And I think that really is something, of course, we need to address, where right from the beginning, children are taught the basics of there's a tax you have to pay. So, when you grow up, yes, you're going to earn an income, but you're going to have to pay a tax. I think it's a concept that hasn't. That's what makes it complicated, because it's not part of the norm. I think. It's,
Okay, so you see, like you say, the tax in Uganda, most of us get to know about taxes when you actually get a job and you're seeing that they've cut the money. It's not what maybe you're saying for and you're wondering what's going on. So my next question would be, right now I don't know if you knew tax before you started work. I know you studied in Uganda. So I would like to ask you, at this point in time in your career, what would you say is your biggest achievement when it comes to career and maybe working in tax that is branded a man's world?
I think when you say the biggest achievement, I'm always hesitant to say, to quote things like that
could be a
in
highlight.
terms of career highlights.
Yeah.
But I have to say I've been very, very privileged.
Yeah.
I consider myself very, very privileged, really, in that I have found every stage as an opportunity to do something positive.
Yeah.
And that's how I suppose it makes it seamless and it makes it easier when you know that you want to be the best you can be where you're at. Now, it may not seem in the sense of highlights, because for me, what makes me really happy and excited is if I can achieve the goals that I've set for myself in any given task, so to speak. And I would say, you know, if you were to ask me before the beginning of this particular job, what my highlights would have been, I would very easily say, I mean, I was the head of litigation for a whole department in Cheltenham, which is southwestern of England. You know, that is like, in a sense, you've got it, isn't it? A lot easier than life here.
True.
I have to be honest. And then, and yes, that would have been it was very comfortable for all of us as a family. But because in life, I've always got to ask myself, am I where I'm supposed to be?
Nice.
Is this where I'm supposed to be? Am I doing what I'm meant to be doing? And when the opportunity for this job came up, I looked at the job description and I looked at my CV and I was pretty much amazed. It was like, I felt like I'd been prepared for this mission, for this task. And yes, it wasn't going to be comfortable. Probably it wasn't going to be pretty. And I would have to make lots of adjustments. But I ultimately knew that this is not just about me. It's a whole nation. It's other people. And the key thing that was ringing in my mind, what if all these different law firms I've worked at in England and the experience I had in Uganda was all tied up so that I can bring this experience. I'm reminded of, you know, the story about the talent. So, you know, it's like, if God has given you this talent, have I actually used them?
True.
And for myself, the question was, okay, yes, I could stay and I would be very comfortable, but perhaps what if? And I hate to have regrets. I'd want to go to my deathbed knowing I've done everything I was supposed to have done and have absolutely no regrets. So yes, it's an adventure. Yes, it's a challenge. But ultimately, there's no regret. So I'll have done what I'm meant to do. And I think that in itself is perhaps the achievement.
You're so selfless, you know? You're so selfless and passionate. I don't think someone else would have made the decision that you made, you know?
Well, I thought that if I refused, I might be like Jonah, and I don't want to be.
You don't want to be eaten
I don't
by
want
a
to
fish.
be eaten. I think I would hate to be in the stomach of a whale or something. And I think that's the thing. I know there are different points where I thought, gosh, is the journey backwards easier than the journey forwards? But at the same time, I think if you know that you're called to do something and you're sure of that, like for me, it was just very clear. And then you don't worry about how it's going to be because it's not of your making. I am not responsible for how this turns out. I am not. Because I know if God wants me to be there, He's going to do it. It's not about me, it's about Him. And so if anything goes wrong, I go like, God, that's your business.
We'll see what you did.
It's your business, you got to fix it. I can't do it, you know. So I guess that's a good comfort for me.
It's a good comfort for
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, away from work, what do you do for fun?
Oh, I love reading. I love reading.
Okay.
I love reading to the point that it annoys my family because I've got so many books. The most important thing to me to bring back from the UK is my boxes of books.
Wow. So
Because
have
I
you
love
made
it.
the move like completely? You've
They're
relocated
all,
with everyone?
they're all coming, but they are burdened with my boxes of books, which they've tried to negotiate. And I'm thinking, that's non-negotiable.
You have to bring them.
Because I love my books. I love books. I think since I was a little child, I loved reading.
Nice.
And it's just a joy. And I learn a lot. And that's how I feel I nurture the mind. You can't give what you don't have.
Are there authors you can recommend? I've read a bit of John Grisham. I just like his books, what he does with
What
the
he
writing.
does.
Yeah, so nice.
It is. One of my greatest books is by Stephen Covey, and that's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Okay, I think I've seen that one.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, that's timeless, really, in terms of behavior and how to. I suppose it's how do you become an effective person. But the key thing actually in that book is the time management. I think, and which is quite key.
Which is
where
key,
I am
definitely.
in terms of competing priorities. What's urgent? What's a priority? There's a very good concept in there about that. The other book is a very tiny book. Who Moved My Cheese?
I know it. I've
Do you
read
know
it?
it?
Yeah, totally.
Which I always, whenever people are going through change, I'm like, read that book. Who Moved My Cheese?
I read it the first time I got into URI. It's the first book I read. Like someone just recommended, like, hey, I know you're getting a new job. There's something here for you, and I'm like, what?
Exactly. And it's such a small book,
Yeah, very small,
very
but very
simple and very
dedicated.
great, concept. Yeah. And it's one of those that I love. I tell my sometimes I've told my kids to now, are you the mouse? Which mice are you? Where are you
Where are you
exactly
in
in
this?
all this? Find yourself, so to speak. So but I do love books and I read all sorts. Not all of them educational. I genuinely could read a Christmas whatever book. I think it was very good in terms of adopting very easily in the UK because in a sense the books we read and the movies we watch are all these green hills and all these farms, with their picket fences and all. And I'm like, oh yeah, so this is what they are, and reading about snow. Or if you ever read Charles Dickens' book, Great Expectations,
I read it.
the graveyard phase, when and then it talks about the mist and the grey, and you can't quite grasp
get
it.
properly.
Or Miss Havisham in her her grandeur dressing. So in a sense, it was great to see that sense of the culture. Like, this is where it's all from,
So you got to experience the grey mist and the alleys
Well,
and the dark
exactly.
alleys
And
and the small lights.
It's pretty serious stuff seeing it in person. I was like, so this is the Great Expectations setting.
Yeah.
Where there's the mist and the fog and all of that in a graveyard. I can see why it was creepy, even reading about it, isn't it?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
How would you describe yourself? Like in 3 words.
Bubbly, present and optimistic.
Ooh. Nice. For someone who is watching this show, it could be a girl or boy, or someone who is stuck in their career, or someone trying to go upwards. What would you tell them?
Don't sell yourself short.
I like
Dream
that.
big.
I like that.
If you think you can achieve your dream, then you're dreaming small.
Okay. What if it's so big and then I get it? Like, do I have to dream bigger?
You should always dream big. I think if you think about it, when you really a lot of the limitations in terms of what we achieve and what we think we can do are self-imposed.
Yes, that's true.
Because you're no different from the guy who created the Apple Watch. You're no different from anybody else. It's just we set ourselves into these boxes, and some of it really, part of it is our background. But I think I'm if for those who really know me, I'm living testimony that anything is possible.
Wow.
I genuinely am. So in the sense that I could just be anybody. Literally, I could.
Okay.
So I don't think it's, I've been blessed, extremely blessed.
Yes.
But in terms of my background, my beginnings, very hard. So I think it's possible. Anything is possible for anybody. Just the sky has to always be the limit.
Okay.
Because we've all been given the same day. We've all been given the same breath.
Yeah.
We've all got brains. It's what we choose to put our minds to and how we think. And the mind is the tricky bit because a lot of the limitations are in our own mindsets.
True.
But once you stop the walls and the limitations put on your mind, anything is possible.
Happen.
You can think outside the box.
True. True.
And anything is possible.
Okay. So like you said, you're very optimistic, you're very present. What drives you to become who you are?
I mean, what's the alternative?
Thanks, man.
Why would you be miserable? The world has enough misery of its own.
Yeah.
The world is unpredictable. What's the alternative?
Yeah.
I'd rather seize the day than the other way around. I think the alternative is just abysmal.
Yeah.
So I'd definitely rather opt for the other way. For the other way. I suppose I always think you're privileged wherever you are. You're privileged. There are people who don't have the same opportunity. There are people who woke up today and could not really walk. Or so it's a concept I always tell my girls when they're complaining and whining. I'm like, are you aware that there are people who are right now experiencing a natural disaster? So the fact that you've got food, a roof over your head, be grateful.
Exactly.
If you have a grateful heart, I guess it makes you content for a start, but it also makes you see life through different lenses. The perspective to be optimistic and to keep giving your very best rather than the other way around.
Yeah, as we wind up the show, I know this is your new role. You're still new to it. So just as quickly, what do you hope to achieve?
I think the key thing for me is I feel I like to mentor and to be a coach. I think the beauty is my department has got really brilliant minds, really clever girls. They're teaching me a lot. It's not about me just teaching or anything. I've got my experience to bring, but I'm also learning a lot from them, and I enjoy that. So my real hope is that the legal department at URA, which is really an in-house law firm that is serving the entire institution. My hope is that it will exemplify indeed professionalism, that will be a law firm that has integrity in an institution which has got all manner of issues about corruption and not being professional. I would hope that the law firm as it is, which is the legal department that I'm heading, will be transformed enough to be something that exemplifies what the legal profession should look like. My other hope is that really we will become client-focused. I suppose when people know that the tax is an obligation and we become the enforcers that treat people like they're not people. I don't think that's professional, and I don't think it paints a good picture. Yes, we would want to collect the taxes, and yes, we are enforcers of that law. But I would like for us to be able to treat the taxpayers as people. The key thing I keep asking is, if you were on the other side, how would you like to be treated?
True.
Because it's the same way. So it's us being professional, us treating the taxpayers with a sense of, yes, that's it, and to be helpful and to have a real customer focus where we are implementers of the law, but also have the ability to do things in a way that it does not necessarily disrespect, but treats a person as Ubuntu. You know the
Yeah,
saying?
yes, I know it.
Ubuntu? I believe in that strongly. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining us. Personally, I've learned so much. I've learned to be selfless. I've learned not to sell myself short. Like, I feel like your optimism just rubbed off on me. Thank you so much for coming, for the time. I enjoyed your story, and I hope our viewers will enjoy it too.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.